there now. It's quite different.
Hello there, welcome back. You're watching Prime Time with me, Rosanna Lockwood. Now, last week, this show revealed what the Post Office's Serving Director of Communications really thought the sub-postmasters pursued by the Post Office. Richard Taylor, speaking in March 2020, suggested some of those affected by the scandal were potential and, indeed, actual criminals.
You go, oh, I might try to post something. You go, hey! I would say, here, have a big red sign outside your door, and here, have a counter, and here, have some scales, and and then the main stuff which we give you is £30,000 in cash to stick in a safe. And the problem with £30,000 of cash in a safe is that you've got 11,500 post offices. Some of those people might decide to, not necessarily with any particular ill intent, borrow that money for a little while.
So you think that's what happened?
Well, some of them downright sold it. The problem is they're all grouped together, as is true in life, There are probably some people for whom they have been hard done by. For some other people, they did steal the money. But at the moment, the narrative is they're all innocent and they all need to be vindicated.
That's some extraordinary words there. And the Post Office has now suspended Mr Taylor, saying, while we are not privy to the full conversation and the associated context, we have suspended him with immediate effect pending an investigation. Now, Mr Taylor said last week that he was deeply sorry about the impact of the scandal on victims. He has also sincerely apologised for any past remarks he may have made which caused hurt or offence. To discuss this further, I'm joined by The Times' Tom Witherow. He's been following this story for years from a journalistic capacity. Tom, thank you. Reporting on this has been really interesting to read throughout, and obviously the story has captured public attention in a vast way. In terms of Mr Taylor, having to step down at this point, is this one of the first people from the Post Office to actually face any actual consequences?
Well, it's certainly the first to potentially, be in a position where they might lose their job over what's happened. And we heard there those unguarded thoughts, which there are so many postmasters have been worried throughout all this period, through the fight for compensation, that the Post Office actually, in secret, believes that many of them were guilty of those crimes. And hearing those comments that you've just played will confirm those fears for many of them. Yeah,
it must be very, very tough for all of those sub-postmasters and postmistresses to hear that type of conversation that happened in the Post Office. But look, Mr Taylor wasn't actually present during the scandal. There were other Post Office executives that were. We're not saying they would have said the same words, but do you think this prospect for further action against the executives who were there at the time?
Well, there's been a lot of focus on the chief executive for 9 years, Paula Venables. She has given a defence to the Business Select Committee, but COVID meant that she couldn't appear in person. She'll be up in front of the public inquiry later this year, and the government have said that they will consider clawing back £2 million worth of bonuses that she was paid while she was there. Of course, I think there's going to be a lot of focus in the next year or two on the police investigation. They confirmed a week ago that they have expanded to look at potential fraud offences at the Post Office, and they're already looking at potential perjury offences at Fujitsu. That's the IT company which ran the faulty Horizon system.
Yeah, a lot of people want to see Fujitsu have some sort of action taken against it, that Japanese company that provided this software that caused all of these issues. In terms of some of the evidence behind some of the charges against the sub-postmasters, you've done some reporting on that today. Walk us through it in terms of what you've discovered.
Yeah, well, it's really important for us to consider when the Post Office knew that there might be issues with this IT software, and when these prosecutions, they might have known that they were unsafe and that there was this huge miscarriage of justice, the biggest in our legal history. So what I reported this morning was that when independent investigators came in 2012 and 2013, so that's almost 10 years before the scandal was fully blown open and postmasters exonerated, that they had actually told the senior executive, the right-hand woman of the aforementioned Paula Venables, that there could be a miscarriage of justice. And that was the case of Joe Hamilton, who featured in the ITV drama that millions of us enjoyed a week ago, that the investigating team at the Post Office have found there was no evidence of theft, but that's what she was charged with.
It's extraordinary stuff. And of course, Paula Venables, who we mentioned there before her, has symbolically handed back her CBE, but I think that was just the start of what some people would like to see in terms of some repercussions for her and other executives as well. Look, Tom Witherow, reporter for The Times, thanks so much for joining us. Well, joining us now from down the line, Tim Brentnell, one of the victims of this scandal, a former sub-postmaster prosecuted by the Post Office and only cleared in 2021. Tim, you and I spoke a week ago. You shared your story with us, and we're still grateful for that. We've invited you on this evening to understand a bit more about your reaction to the suspension of Mr. Taylor, who we heard in that recording there, talking about the presumed guilt of some involved in this scandal. When you heard that recording, what did you feel?
Well, as Tom or yourself alluded to, I'm quite sure that it's indicative of the attitude of senior post office staff, because, as Tom said, they were made aware that prosecutions were unsafe, at least as far back as 2012, and yet they went on to spend over £100 million of taxpayers' money fighting the 555, the group litigation order against them, when they fully knew that their prosecutions were unsafe. And I'm convinced that they thought we were all on the take.
Were you aware of that type of culture at the time when you were going through this crisis, when it was affecting your life in such a detrimental way, and other sub-postmasters and mistresses? Were you thinking the senior executives don't believe us, there was a culture of looking the other way or even blaming?
No, because they pulled that trick that's widely reported now to myself and many others when we challenged it or complained about the system or the investigations, or as in my case, just claimed or explained that we didn't understand what was happening or how we'd got ourselves into this position. We were told that we were the only ones having problems, and that was way before any kind of widespread social media or ability to connect with each other. So you end up believing that lie and thinking that perhaps you've caused this problem yourself.
In terms of Mr. Taylor having, lost his post, he wasn't actually around in that post during the scandal. What type of consequences do you think other senior executives who presided over the prosecution should face?
Well, there's got to be some kind of clawback of bonuses, because they've all been paid through ironically false accounting or false accounts that they've committed perjury or they've just tried to deny us justice, and then being able to walk away with nice big bonuses.
Yeah, that must sting a huge amount for all of you. Look, in terms of the Post Office itself, there's some claims that it could even be charged as insolvent. Is that something you would want to see? Do you think it should be shut down, replaced, reformed?
Reformed. I'd like to see the end of the brand, but not the service, because we have to remember that all of the remaining sub-postmasters, the majority of them are individual entrepreneurs who are just trying to add something to their community or value to their businesses. So it needs to be reformed, rebranded, the senior level management taken away. The service is still needed by a great many people every day, so we can't take that away from the people or the people trying to run those businesses. But at board level and down, it's got to change. Yeah,
it's absolutely such a huge part of British life, especially rural British life, lesser connected communities. It's not just post, of course, it's banking and all sorts of other services. Look, Tim, thank you very much for joining us once again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next year on Prime Time, we're asking who wants to be a trillionaire